Hello. Hi, what's up you guys? It's Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Rachel Kelly. I am from Michigan and I am a children's ministry director by trade. I make content, everything from lifestyle, LGBT content, body positivity, pretty much whatever I want to talk about. So today I thought I'd chat about a topic that I've been wanting to talk about. It's kind of a hot button issue, purity culture and Christian fundamentalism. And I think that I have kind of a unique perspective because I do see both sides. Growing up in this culture, I can kind of see where both sides are coming from. And we're going to get pretty spicy in this particular video because I even have notes written down. Usually I just talk about whatever I want to talk about, but I actually have a plan for this video. So hop into this. Okay, so the first part of this issue I wanted to chat about was modesty. How this affected me, how it was presented to me, and this kind of ideology that you have to dress a certain way to earn respect. And I think there's so many facets to this. I know that when I was growing up, obviously I wasn't allowed to, for some context, I grew up in the Nazarene Church, and if you want more in-depth explanation of what the Nazarenes believe, I can link a couple of resources down below. But basically, I was definitely heavily conservative growing up, and those were a lot of the viewpoints that were presented to me. So, I didn't wear shorts. I had old jeans that my mom would cut off at the knee. I didn't wear, short dresses. Once I hit puberty, I wasn't allowed to wear, spaghetti straps. I wasn't allowed to wear two-piece swimsuits. And there was this kind of thought process that if you showed skin, boys wouldn't respect you, and that you were causing your brothers in Christ to stumble, which basically meant that if you were to show any part of your skin, boys would lust after you, and that was your fault, and that was a sin on their part. So to help your brothers in Christ not to sin, it was your job to cover up your certain areas that would cause the stumbling. And I think for many years I believed this, and to an extent I still do. I think one of the comments that kept coming up with my youth pastor and some youth leaders and things of that nature, even my mom, would tell me that men are very visual, and that even if they were going to be attracted to me regardless of what I was wearing, I shouldn't make it easy. You know what I mean? And I think that while this is true, I think that men are visual, or traditionally, because not all men are the same, and obviously there are many definitions of what a man is, and some men aren't visual. But if we're overgeneralizing, we could say that if a man were to see me in a bikini, that he would stumble. Sure. It's also not my job. And it's no one else's job to protect men from their urges, I guess. And I think that what this puts on women is less of, oh, you're helping men. It's more, you should be ashamed of your body. And I think a lot of what this comes down to as well is you're judging one woman to the next. And I think because obviously women who are a little bit thicker, a little curvier, more well-endowed, which I am, I think are judged more harshly than women who may not have as much up top, maybe not have as voluptuous legs or chest area. I think that they are judged less harshly because they're not, in your face about it, if I should say it like that. And I think that there was so many examples of this where I wasn't even dressing inappropriately, but I think that people just kind of had this idea of what modest was. And I think there was this thought that modest is the hottest. And if you were to dress immodestly, that's like disrespectful to your future spouse. And I'll get into that. But it's just so mean. And it's and the way that women are objectified in the church is ridiculous. Like, genuinely, I know I went to a Christian university, and I had a professor who basically told us the dress code for women at the beginning of the semester. And again, the men didn't have the same dress code. Not even close. I don't even think the men had a dress code. And but women had to dress a certain way because he didn't want to get distracted. This is like a 50-something, 60-year-old man telling us that we couldn't wear a low-cut shirt because he would get distracted. And that's so gross, first of all, but also to put the responsibility on your students and just women in general is just so crummy. And I think that the fact that we're so comfortable doing that after all these years, also, it's us who are doing this to ourselves. And I think that me at this point in my life, I'm trying to kind of gravitate away from this idea that I have to cover up my skin to be worth something and to be given respect. And I still don't show skin, and I make jokes about it because I have quite a bit of cleavage in most shirts, and so all my shirts are like high neck. Because every time I do get a low cut top, which I think looks good at the time, I end up wearing undershirts underneath it because I'm so used to having to cover up that part of my body. And I've gotten too comfortable hiding myself because I've been told for so long that that's what I needed to do. And I know I look good, but I can't show how I look because I wouldn't want my brothers in Christ to stumble. But I think that the issue for me is that it isn't my choice. I say that it's my choice. I say that, I feel more comfortable covering up. But in all reality, I just feel so much shame around certain parts of my body because I've been told that it was shameful and that I was told that I had to hide it for so long. And I'm trying to get to a better place. And not that I want to dress inappropriately, which is your prerogative if you want to dress a certain way, but not that I want to show off all the goods, but I want to not hate myself so much when I show off a little leg or a little chest. Like, there's a difference between guilt and shame. Honestly, what the church is promoting is shame, and they're passing it off as guilt. They're saying if you feel guilty for wearing something inappropriate, it's because the Lord is telling you you shouldn't be wearing that. But in reality, you're feeling shame because people have been telling you your entire life not to wear that thing. That's what's happening. And also, it's so normal for us to treat other people that way too. Like, I see women wearing low-cut tops and booty shorts, and I look at them like they have less self-worth. And it's like, that is not my place whatsoever. And the only reason I'm looking at them that way is because of how I've been taught and the indoctrination that has been through my mind. And in all reality, if I hadn't been taught that, if I hadn't grown up in the church, if I had not been taught to look at women sexually like that, I don't think I would have had an issue. I genuinely think I would see a woman in a low-cut top and I'd be like, yeah, those are boobs. Like, it's really not as big of a deal as I think we're making it out to be. And I think, honestly, by making it more obsessive and by saying, you really can't look at that. You can't look at that. That's going to make you feel things and think things. I think by obsessing over it, it's actually making it worse. And that's why we're having so many sexually confused Christian men who are acting out, because they've been so taught to put that pressure on women's bodies to begin with. And I think that this moves very smoothly into my next point, which is about physical boundaries and marriage. And like I touched on earlier, dressing immodestly would be bad for your future spouse. It's going to make you less desirable for your future husband, and you need to cover that up because it is for your husband's eyes only, right? And the idea of physical boundaries came from a very loving place, I think. And I feel good about the message. And I think that that's one difference between me and a lot of people who are kind of crapping on purity culture as a whole, is they're kind of saying, like, it's crazy to not want to date around. It's crazy to save sex for marriage. It's crazy to not, make out or whatever. And I disagree. I think that the intention is protecting people. Because for a lot of women, and I will not say all because, again, everybody's different, but for a lot of women, there is this emotional connection revolving around sex and revolving around our bodies and our purity. And I think that when we get close to another person, we feel that we have to be with that person always. And that if we broke up, we had given a part of ourselves to this other person, and it breaks our hearts. And I think the idea behind it is not to put girls, I'm going to say specifically girls, in this position of giving too much away and then regretting it down the line, and avoiding heartbreak. And I think that that's a lot where it stands from. Yes, they don't want unwed mothers, and obviously that's a large part of it. But I think the idea of not dating around, doing courtship, having chaperones, is trying to keep those physical boundaries. And so that you only have to do that with one person, and they're not going to break up with you because you're married. At least that's the idea, right? And I think that there's a lot of issues that this presents. And while it works for some people, and I'm not going to say it doesn't work, because clearly it does. Plenty of people court and have chaperones, and they don't kiss or touch before marriage, and they go on to have very healthy, successful marriages, and that's wonderful. But I think that the problem is that there are several people, a vast number of women who cannot touch their future spouses. They can't even be alone with them to have a deep conversation, because people are peering over them trying to make sure that they don't touch each other before they're married. And the issue that presents is a number of things. One is the age. You start wanting to date when you're very, very young. Or at least I know a lot of people do, right? So let's say you have like a 16, 17-year-old and they're in their first relationship. You are telling them that you're dating for marriage. You cannot have any physical contact until you're married. And so these kids, let's say they're getting close to the marrying age, 18, right? So let's say they're about 16, 17 years old. They get their first boyfriend, girlfriend, and, they're going to youth group together, whatever, and they're holding hands, and they can't go beyond that because they don't want to hurt God's feelings or whatever. And they're so infatuated with each other because, they're teenagers, that they're thinking, we need to get married when it's time to get married, and we can finally have sex. And I am not saying that that's the only reason young Christians get married. I'm not saying that the only reason they're getting married is because of sex, because obviously they love each other, right? But the issue that putting so much emphasis on not having sex, the issue with making that the priority is that other parts of the relationship don't get fleshed out, because that is the primary focus. And if you had more time, if it wasn't so, if you think you're going to get married, just do it. If it wasn't just like, why would you wait if you're going to get married eventually? The issue is there's so much growing that you need to do as a person. And when you're so focused on not having sex, I think that there's so many issues that presents, because you're not thinking, we need to get to know each other. You're thinking, how much can we get to know each other in this span of time so that we can finally, go on. Like, in the Christian university standpoint, there's this whole phenomenon of ring by spring. And it's like freshmen going into a Christian university and coming out with a serious relationship and engagement and a marriage within like a year. And this stuff genuinely happens. And they don't know real life. They're living in family housing where they're still on their meal plans. They're still using financial aid. They're not in the real world. And they're dealing with young infatuation emotions. And I'm not saying that they don't understand what they're doing, but I think that we're putting so much pressure to get married and not have sex that people are not doing as much internal searching in their relationship as they should be. And they're not deepening that connection in other areas. I had a conversation with a professor. Well, I didn't have a conversation, but I was over at a professor's house because he invited his ministry students. I was a ministry student at the time, and he invited all of us over for dinner. And one of the other students, he was in the ministry program, and he had been with his partner, his girlfriend, for about as much as I had been with my partner, right? And he said, eventually we're going to get married after, I graduate and all that stuff. Reasonable, right? And he said, just get married. If you're going to get married anyway, just do it now. That was his advice. A lot can change, and I think you know a lot about a person the more that you're with them. And I think that when you rush into things just to avoid sinning, that is an issue. And that, while I understand the intent, I think it's causing more damage than it's causing good, because you're rushing children into relationships where they barely know the person just so that they can get that physical bond, right? And I think that they need to know that there are other options. And beyond that, if they do slip up, if they do sin, and they do things that they aren't supposed to do with another person before they're married, and it's a toxic relationship, there are people that will stay in that relationship because they are so focused on only being with their spouse that they would continue in that relationship solely because that's the person that they have done those things with. And that causes a whole other host of issues and trauma and problems that cannot be solved with a prayer, to be honest. And this is coming from a Christian. This is coming from a person who believes that abstinence is a valid way of protecting yourself. And I think going on to the saving yourself for marriage as a whole, I think that, for me at least, I think a lot of it came down to this fear-mongering. And if you were an unwed mother, it was awful. Like, it's more than you just had sex. It's you got pregnant, or you got someone pregnant. And obviously, abortion is off the table, right? And adoption can be extremely stressful. And I think that this idea that if you were to get pregnant out of wedlock, you'd basically be shunned unless you got married. And then, of course, everyone would say it's a shotgun wedding, and who wants to be a part of that? And so it becomes less about saving yourself because of purity reasons and saving yourself because God wants you to do that, or your youth pastor wants you to do that, or your parents want you to do that, and it becomes more about, I don't want to get pregnant, or I don't want to get my partner pregnant. And I think the issue with that is you're so terrified. And this also comes down to the physical boundaries situation. You're so terrified of going beyond this point that they're telling you about, crossing that line with another person, that by the time you are married, in your marital bed, you are so traumatized by pushing that side of yourself away and saying that it's wrong and saying that being with someone else and touching someone else is the worst thing you could be doing, that when it's okay and everything's on the table, nothing's off limits, that's scary. And that's very fear-inducing. And I've heard a lot of stories about women who, and men for that matter, who go into their marriages just so scared because they've been told for so long that they couldn't and now they can. And it's like, what? There's like no transition period. It's just like, oh, cool, now I can do everything, even though you told me for so long that everything about me was wrong. My body was wrong. Things I did with it was wrong. I think that there's so many issues surrounding putting this pressure on women to protect men from sexual immorality. And I think that if we were to say that purity culture wasn't bad, which clearly it is, clearly there are plenty of issues, a host of issues with purity culture, but let's say that there wasn't. Let's say that purity culture was the way to go, abstinence-only education all the way, woohoo, never touching each other, barely even seeing each other before marriage. Okay, let's say that that's the deal. Put it on both men and women. Do not make it the woman's job to make that happen. Okay? Tell guys not to look. Say, hey, you stop those sexual advances. You don't move too forward. You create those boundaries. You set that line, set that bar, and don't make it the woman's problem, because it puts so much fear and shame, and it's wrong. And to that point, I want to talk about marriage specifically, and I want to talk about submissiveness and my unique perspective on submissiveness. I think in the correct circumstances, it is a good thing. Before people get all upset with me for saying that, I think the way it is intended, could be wrong about this, maybe it's just a guy who wanted his girl to give him whatever he wants, which, decent chance. But if we're looking at it the way it's intended, and it's, I devote myself to you, okay? I am going to trust you to make the decisions for me and our family. Okay, I as the woman are going to put you as the head, and you will make the decisions that you know is best for our family. The idea behind that is that he knows what to do. First of all, he knows what's best for you. He is looking out for your best interest. He wants the best for you. He is going to do everything in his power to make your life better with his power. So you have to choose a partner. You have to be very strategic. You have to choose a partner that is going to look after you and protect you. Okay? So you're giving him full control. You're saying you can make sure our finances, you get us the best finance, you make sure that we have the best house, you make sure that we're having a good intimate relationship, you make sure we have enough kids or we don't have enough kids or whatever. You make those decisions and you know what's best for me, and he is going to take your needs under advisement and he will do what's best, right? That's the hope. That's the intent. And when that happens, that's great. That's a great relationship, because then you are both equally taking care of each other, right? You're giving him the control. You're saying you know what's best, and then he actually does know what's best, and then he protects you. That's the hope, right? You have to choose a really good partner for that, because too often you relinquish control to your partner and he goes, I can use this to my advantage. I get to tell her when we're going to have sex. I get to tell her what she can and cannot buy. I can tell her where we're going to move. I can tell her how many kids we're going to have. I get to make those decisions. And he's not looking out for your best interest. He's looking out for his best interest. And because you made those commitments, those vows, to be with that person forever and have him be at the head of your household, you have to live with that. And basically, what the church is saying is you made that decision, you made a poor choice in husbands, and you have to live with the consequences. That's basically what they're trying to say. And there's so many issues with that because, like I said, if that is what ends up happening, if you're both looking out for each other's best interests, then the submissive thing works. Having the guy at the head of the household works. But in the very likely chance that it doesn't, and that he is just like looking out for his own best interest, and now he just gets a submissive wife who does whatever he wants, it's your fault. It's your fault for choosing the wrong partner. It's your fault for not seeing the signs earlier, the red flags. And this swings it back full circle to the original point I was trying to make with the age thing and not having enough time to get to know somebody, because you're saying just don't sin. That is the main goal. Don't sin. Get married so you will not sin. It doesn't matter if you've only been dating for 4 to 6 months. It doesn't matter if you're only 18. Get married, because if you think it's right at 4 to 6 months, then you're going to get married and it's going to be great and you're going to be fine. Let's say you fell in love with a person and he seems great on the outside. Okay? He's so nice. He's on fire for the Lord. You have great conversations with your chaperone together and you're holding hands and it's great and he's really, really hot and you're like, man, I want him. It's been 6 months. I'm of age. I'm 18. My parents would love it if we got married. We're both living with our parents at the moment, but I'm sure we could get a loan for a house with a cosigner. You say, let's get married. To heck with it. We can finally do the do. You end up getting married. You've only known them for a year. And you finally get to that point in your relationship where he's the head of the household and there are so many things that you don't know about him. He is putting his needs above yours. And it's your fault. It's not the people that told you to get married young. It's not the people that told you not to sin. It's not the people that are saying that getting married is better than lusting. It's not their fault. It's not purity culture's fault. It's not Christian fundamentalism's fault. It's your fault for choosing the wrong partner. And I think all of this is to say that purity culture and the thought behind it, I don't want teenagers to have kids out of wedlock. I want there to be relationships where both partners are looking out for each other's best interest. I want a strong role model, a strong leader. I want physical boundaries so that we are protecting the emotions of women. We're looking at those initial concepts, those initial thoughts, like, this is what I want for my family. Great. Protecting people. This is the ideal marriage. This is what's going to work. Okay, I see your point. You look at the damage that it's caused because nobody's perfect and nobody makes decisions exactly the way they're supposed to be made. Do you throw the dart at the board? Say, throw the purity culture dart at the board and hope that you get the bullseye on a perfect marriage, and just keep missing the mark so many times and hurting people along the way and creating little trauma trails all over the place? Or do you say, this is a problem? You say, this is a problem that is hurting people, and you rewrite it. You apologize for the implications. You say, this isn't clear cut. You say, this doesn't work for everybody because everybody's different and everyone has their unique perspectives and their unique situations. But this is one way that you could possibly make it work. But no one's going to do that. No one is going to apologize for the way they've been teaching children for years. No one is going to apologize for purity culture. They're not going to say, oh, actually, we were wrong. We missed the mark. This works some of the time, but not all of the time. They're not going to say that. And that's the issue. The issue isn't that purity culture never works, that modesty never works, that physical boundaries never work, abstinence, saving yourself from marriage. Not saying that that never works. Not saying that submissiveness never works. It's saying sometimes it does, but everyone's situation is different, and I'm sorry that I said that this is the perfect solution to all of your problems. And I just want to leave you with one thing. I am not fixed from this. I'm still dealing with this. And I will continue healing from this. I'm, getting married soon. And I think that this has been really heavily weighing on my heart recently, because I've been told for so long what a holy, godly marriage is supposed to look like, and I'm trying to protect myself and protect my future children and to protect my students. And I don't want to perpetuate this idea anymore, that this is the only way, that scaring young girls is the only way, scaring young boys is the only way. I want to get past this, and I think that from now on, I think going forward, I think we as Christians, need to say there isn't one answer. And if you do follow the guidelines, if you do say, I'm going to stick to the original purity culture narrative, and it doesn't work, it's okay. And there's nothing wrong with you because you didn't make it work. That you waited until marriage and you did the thing and you really tried your hardest to make this marriage work and it didn't. No shame. It didn't work for you because everybody's different. I think if we can get to that place, if we can get to that point, I think we're going to be better than we are now. Much better than we were 5, 10, 20, 50 years ago. Definitely. Thank you for coming along with me on that rant. Good talk. I want you to like, comment, and subscribe. I will have some resources down in the description. If you want to stick around and see more content, I have some videos up on my channel. My next video will hopefully be coming out next week. I want to do a video with Jathan, my fiance, before we get married, so that should be fun. If you want to have more content about Christian fundamentalism or Christianity or deconstruction or anything along those lines, let me know in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe.